Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Brandon Wales, the Vice President for Cybersecurity Strategy at SentinelOne. Brandon, thanks for joining me.
No, thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here to talk through this issue that's on everyone's minds, AI and cybersecurity. And we're going to talk through that topic from multiple lenses, but let's start a little bit with the threat landscape. I think everyone is concerned about cyber adversaries weaponizing AI. What does that mean in your view, specifically for federal agencies who obviously have to defend against some pretty sophisticated adversaries?
Sure. So I think the AI lens kind of sits on top of what was already a very aggressive threat posture that the government and industry is currently facing today. We have adversaries from nation states like Russia and China, extremely aggressive pre-positioning on critical infrastructure. You have efforts by particularly Russian actors disrupting things in Europe and elsewhere associated with their campaign in Ukraine. You have ransomware criminal actors who are disrupting communities and businesses across the country every single day. And now on top of all of that, you have AI, which is really just an accelerant. It is giving speed and scale in ways that we didn't have before. It has not fundamentally altered the nature of what we see in terms of threats today, but it has made all of them more significant. And I think you are actually starting to see where AI could go in the future and make that much worse in terms of fully agentic attacks. The same way that businesses are thinking about how do they improve their productivity, their operations, using these modern agents, adversaries are trying to figure out how do they weaponize these. And I think you've had some proof of concepts, you've had some initial cases where adversaries are using these for operations. But that is only going to get worse. Month after month, we see their tactics, their tradecraft improve. And I'll just note that this, again, the environment that this is coming into was already serious. Federal agencies were under attack. Our adversaries were preparing for future conflict, and cyber is going to be a key enabler for that conflict.
Yeah, it already wasn't a great situation, to say the least, when it comes to cybersecurity. And agencies have long known about this issue. It's one of those really sticky issues. It's still on GAO's high risk list, for instance, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon. But you come from kind of seeing this government-wide a little bit from your former position at CISA, and I'd love to get your thoughts on what do you see as some of those challenges, those big issues that agencies have to work through now that we have AI in the mix as well?
Yeah, so agencies deal with a variety of challenges when it comes to cybersecurity. On the one hand, they have a pervasive threat environment where actors are really focused, very focused on trying to get in and compromise those agencies. Two, you have a legacy. You've got a lot of technical debt that agencies suffer under, and a lot of those legacy systems have a hard time dealing with modern cybersecurity challenges. There are resource constraints, particularly in a budget-constrained environment where you can't invest in the degree of security that you feel like you need, given the risk posture that you're under. And so all of this is coming together, and then kind of AI has just been layered on top of all this as an accelerant, making all of it harder. More demands on CIOs and CISOs to bring in AI tools, at the same time securing those tools and securing against AI-enabled attacks is making that job harder. So all of that sits on the backs of CIOs and CISOs across the government, and it is an immense challenge.
Yeah, it seems like for a CIO or a CISO, the job never gets easier. And you mentioned how there's also this demand to just bring in AI generally across agencies now. We have heard a lot in the past about the risks of shadow IT. Now agencies have to worry about shadow AI to a certain extent. And then just the fact that the AI security risks are still relatively early on, I think, and how you tackle those. So from a securing the network perspective, what do you worry about with this introduction of generative AI and these other new technologies?
Yeah, I mean, this is such an important issue because the demand, the pull for the promised productivity gains from AI is extremely strong. And so we see this in both in industry and in government, where business owners want and need that productivity gain for fear of missing out. At the same time, the risk framework, the security frameworks around that have not necessarily kept pace. So there is not as clear a roadmap for how a CIO and CISO engage in the security practices that they need to provide security for those tools. I would argue that we're about 20 years behind where we are in cyber. So for example, NIST released their AI risk management framework, rough corollary to the NIST cybersecurity framework that they released back in 2012 and have updated since then. But that cybersecurity framework built on a foundation of hundreds of NIST special publications that talk through different aspects of the cybersecurity ecosystem and talked about the specific controls that were needed. That doesn't exist for AI. We're building it right now. And agencies have to figure that out, what that framework is going to look like, what are those critical controls at the same time that they're building in all these systems. And frankly, we don't have 20 years to catch up because of how quickly AI is accelerating the threat. Now, I think in SentinelOne, we saw this high demand from our customers to say, how do we help secure, not just use AI in security, which has been a key element of the AI, of the SentinelOne cybersecurity stack from its creation, but how do you secure AI? And we looked around and found out that the best in breed already existed, went out and made an acquisition of a company called Prompt Security. And this is really a critical new element in our security offerings because it helps both companies and government agencies. It can help them provide real-time visibility for any potential loss of intellectual property. Are people misusing LLMs, putting in sensitive information, business sensitive information, sensitive personal identifier information? It can help secure APIs that developers are using to interact with LLMs as part of the engineering work happening at agencies and companies. And it gives them the visibility that they need to provide the right level of security so that they can actually use these tools with confidence. Because I think our goal is we want companies, we want agencies to unlock the real benefits of AI, but they can only do that if they're able to manage those risks. Otherwise, I think the fear is that a lot of agency security officials will lock them down and you'll not be able to kind of get the most out of them. And we want to free that up to make sure that everyone can actually get the benefits that they want and they need, and that are going to be critical for the future.
Sure, recognizing that users are going to make mistakes or misuse things as they have long done is probably key there.
Yeah, I mean, so the system is actually pretty incredible when I actually saw it work in practice, where to the point where you can start typing in a social security number and it will immediately anonymize it in terms of what is ultimately sent to the LLM based upon kind of the plugin that's used. So it can actually really help people avoid making what some cases could be just an honest mistake. In other cases could be potentially be malicious or purposeful, some type of insider threat. So really type of incredible technology. And I think it's going to be really important to helping to really unlock all the benefits that we want out of AI.
Yeah, and so, this administration has kind of signaled a much more light touch approach to AI regulation and governance generally, and I'm sure in the governance space that agencies have to worry about. Can you talk a little bit more about that, balancing that approach between security and innovation, because it so often seems like those things can be at odds?
Yeah, and I don't think they have to be at odds here, because I think the real benefit is security is an enabler. It helps you have confidence in all the innovation that you are doing, that it is protected. Because I think the last thing a company or an agency wants to do is allow its hard-earned intellectual property, its sensitive business information, sensitive information about government practices, operations, et cetera, to be exposed to the world. And if there is fear of that, it is more likely that agencies will clamp down, not allow that information, not allow those tools to be used, or slow down their development. It's one of the reasons why, because of a lot of these governance procedures that the government has long had, why the government is often a couple of years behind industry in terms of using modern tools. I think the more we can help provide assurance that these tools can be used safely and securely, the more they'll be willing to use them, and the more we can actually benefit from this technology, from all the innovation that's happening out there.
Sure. Well, and so you mentioned a term earlier, technical debt. We know many agencies are sitting on older legacy systems. They're expensive to maintain, and they don't have the functionality that many people would expect. How does that pose a challenge to some of the things that you just laid out in terms of not just being able to adopt AI, but secure it properly as well.
Yeah, and this goes beyond just AI. I mean, I think many agencies are kind of locked into what I would call kind of zombie platforms, and these are legacy technology. The innovation has stalled, but agencies are forced, because their operations depend on them, they are forced to spend a lot of resources, both in terms of manpower and funding, to keep them going. And I think the real impact of technical debt is that agencies, the very money that they need for innovation, the very money that they want to use to maybe deploy more modern technology, more modern security tooling, let's say, or get the full benefits out of AI, is spent keeping legacy systems alive. And that really saps a lot of what are the potential for government agencies away. I think we've seen this in some real world context where, I don't think I've talked to a CISO who is kind of happy about their legacy SIEM, their security information and event managers, because there are a lot of the legacy SIEM providers, real expensive costs just to provide the baseline storage of the visibility that they need in terms of their cybersecurity telemetry, the information that comes in from all their sensors to help them understand what's happening and how they could take action to respond. And these tools are extremely expensive. Innovation is not where they want it to be, but it is hard for them to get out of it because they have to keep putting good money after bad to keep these systems alive, and it doesn't allow them to kind of move on to more modern AI-enabled SIEMs like ones offered by SentinelOne and others to help make that transition.
Well, we're going to touch on perhaps some of the solutions to all of the problems we've run down here, but first we're going to take a short break. My guest today again is Brandon Wales, the Vice President for Cybersecurity Strategy at SentinelOne. I'm Justin Doubleday on the discussion, Risk and Resilience, Balancing AI Innovation with Mission-Ready Defense, sponsored by SentinelOne on Federal News Network. Brandon, before the break, we were talking a little bit about all the technical debt that agencies are grappling with, how it poses a huge roadblock to getting to some of these more modern security approaches. I think you referenced this earlier, resources are not going to go up markedly at all. In many cases, they're going down for agencies, or at least are flat. So how do agencies prioritize, I guess? Well, what do you do when you have to maintain these legacy systems but also move to new?
Yeah, no, the job of a CISO and a CIO at an agency is harder than ever. Try to balance all of these demands, both the demands from their business lines and their operational elements that need new technology, need innovation, the demands for security to making sure we protect all of this on behalf of the American people. And that challenge is not getting easier. I think there's a couple of strategies that agencies will undertake to kind of think about. One, how do they get the most out of the technology and resources they have? Because technology can be an enabler to help you do more with less. So, if you're able to kind of get rid of some of that technical debt, if you get rid of some of those zombie platforms, replace them with more modern ones that AI has enabled, it can help get you more productivity gains. It can help you get more security benefit than maybe your legacy systems could. So it's a way to, even for roughly similar funding, you're able to get more out of it. Two, I think there's a lot of opportunities in the government to use other people's money, which is always good. So there are pots of resources out there, whether it's the Technology Modernization Fund that OMB maintains, or whether it's resources that come out of CISA, like there was Continuous Diagnostics and Mitigation Program. There are ways of getting security benefits and technology improvements using other people's funds, and agencies need to use that and need to be creative. How do you structure your procurements? Renew one right at the end of a fiscal year, and then start to execute a new procurement at the beginning. So you use last year's money to give you a transition period. So there are different ways that agencies, I think, need to think about how to do this. But the answer can't be just to wait, because the problem is not going to get better with time. They need to figure out a strategy for how they're going to modernize their environments, how they're going to get to more modern tools, because those are the ones that are going to unlock both the security and productivity benefits they want.
Yeah, and it seems like we've been talking in between kind of the legacy challenges, this kind of like greenfield vision for where agencies could and should go. And then there are the requirements, the directives that OMB sets that they also have to follow and are also kind of hanging over their heads. and for good reason. One of those big requirements during your time in government was the logging requirements that came after SolarWinds. I would love to know a little bit about, we've talked about telemetry visibility, how you think agencies so far are navigating those, and everything we've discussed today, where that's going with some of these AI-powered solutions.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So, coming out of SolarWinds, one of the things we really saw was that the inconsistent logging of security information was one of the reasons why agencies were kind of slow to detect potential challenges, both from SolarWinds and from other incidents. It hampers your ability to do good forensics, understand where the adversary is, take action. And this is not just a problem in government. This is a problem that affects everyone. But one of the outcomes was an OMB directive to agencies for logging certain security information. Now, my understanding is OMB wants to kind of re-examine that, and I think that's very healthy. You want to continue to make sure that you are storing the right information, because that comes at a cost. Anytime you're having to store large amounts of logs, the funding that requires potentially impacts your ability to put that money elsewhere that can have potentially more security benefits. So I think it's a healthy conversation to say what logs are most critical for agencies across the board to store. And where do agencies have more discretion about what makes sense given their own unique risk posture. But what I can say is, security logging is not going away. It is a key element of kind of how we do cybersecurity today. And so I think agencies do want to look for what are the opportunities to both store the right amount of information at the right cost and getting kind of good tools. It's one of the reasons why I've been so impressed with the capabilities that SentinelOne brings to bear in this space. Because it provides agencies to be able to save from legacy providers while building in new AI-enabled tools on top of it that help analysts really get more out of your security information in an easier way.
Yeah.
And so I think that is the direction we hope agencies move in. But this is going to be an ongoing conversation in the cybersecurity community.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a ton of great data in all of those logs. Just really quickly, you mentioned agencies have to prioritize the right logs, the right information, and it depends on the agency. Each one has their own risk management posture, but take us a little bit more to that conversation, that sort of back and forth, I guess, that agencies have to navigate with, well, this is the type of log we might need versus we can let go of this one.
Yeah, I think a lot of it will depend upon their risk posture and also what their environment looks like. So if I'm an agency that has far more cloud-based, multi-cloud environments, my kind of cloud logs become really important. If more critical applications are where my critical applications are running, I'm going to want more logging around those. I think as the security environment changes, so I think we've seen over the past several years a lot of attacks against edge devices, things like firewalls, VPNs, et cetera. And so we strongly encouraged for a long time, improved hardening and logging around those kind of devices. So I think those things will evolve over time. Agencies need to look at their environment, they need to look at their risks and figure out, okay, where are the logs that are going to best help me understand what's happening around my most critical systems, what's going to give me the right level of visibility, for how long do I need to keep those. Those are the conversations that security professionals come in. I think the challenge is cost is just is kind of ever present in that conversation because of the cost of a lot of legacy solutions.
Yeah, that's great perspective. And CISA, your former agency, has a role to play here in how they help agencies navigate these challenges through programs like CDM and others. Especially as we're talking about AI-powered threats, potential AI-powered solutions. What role do you see CISA playing going forward in securing the .gov against that backdrop?
Yeah, so obviously CISA, as kind of the civilian cyber defense agency for the government, plays an incredibly important role in accomplishing any of what we want, security outcomes you want from the government. I'd say there's probably a couple of key areas where their role becomes really, really critical. One, as you note, CDM, the Continuous Diagnostics Mitigation Program, is really essential in terms of getting a consistent set of tools out to all federal agencies to help improve their security. And before CDM, that didn't really exist. You'd have a lot more inconsistency in what federal agencies deployed, less ability to integrate that information up, and there was just inconsistent security practices. That's really changed in the 15 years since the CDM program has been in place. And that's not going away, but it's going to have to keep pace with changing requirements. So as you think about new things such as AI, et cetera, they're going to have to adapt the CDM program to make sure it's continuing to provide the right level of security tooling. I think secondly, the advice and assistance that they provide to federal agencies and then also to folks in state and local government and industry is essential. Because they're the only ones who are full-time. This is their job, to look at what's challenging the cybersecurity professionals today and figure out how do we provide them better information to do their jobs to get the kind of security outcomes we all want. And I think third is the direct technical support that they can provide to agencies, whether it's programs like their persistent access capability, where a lot of the tooling that's been deployed throughout federal agencies, CISA has visibility into some of the telemetry coming off of those so that they can actually correlate information that they're seeing at the boundary of federal agencies from network traffic, that they're looking at the intelligence picture and coupling that together with what's happening on agency networks, fusing all that information to help identify where there's an incident and where there is potential threats. How do you mitigate them very quickly? And so CISA has an important role, and I think it's only going to get stronger in the years to come.
All right. And in the time we have left, I'd love to touch on AI's impact on the people who underpin these cybersecurity programs that we've been talking about, especially within the context of the federal government. How does automation, how will it change the just daily life of a security analyst in your view?
Yeah, no, it's like we have seen from particularly the use of our tool, and we call it Purple AI, which is kind of a human interface, human language interface for our SIM, that it really lets you up-level your junior analysts. They can do more with these tools than they could otherwise. And what it does is it helps you accomplish more. So this is not a matter of like you can replace all your junior analysts. Because frankly, today, we leave so much on the cutting room floor, so many alerts that aren't triaged, et cetera, because we just don't have the resources. There's no CISO who thinks he's got it all covered, or she's got it all covered. AI will allow them to cover cover more information, triage more alerts, do so at a higher level of fidelity, a higher level of confidence in the results that come back. And it basically turbocharges your team. And it frankly gives a lot of your humans, particularly your more sophisticated analysts, that maybe you're sitting in your SOC or on your red team or on your incident response team, it allows them to focus on things that require the kind of human creativity and judgment and take away a lot of the more tasks that can be more automated and routine so that they can do what humans do best. And so we really think that the marriage of technology and automation with human creativity and human ingenuity is a real game changer for the cybersecurity of the future.
Interesting. Well, that's great perspective to end it on. Again, I'd like to thank today's guest. Brandon Wales is the Vice President for Cybersecurity Strategy at SentinelOne. Brandon, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
I'm Justin Doubleday, and you're listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search SentinelOne.